All we hear is this number of people have been killed. Even if you take that number, which you ought not, but for argument's sake, take it. How come it's never broken down? How many of these civilians were executed by Israeli soldiers? How many of them were tortured by Israeli soldiers? How many of them were mutilated by Israeli soldiers? How many were raped by Israeli soldiers? None, 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 and none. There's a short but very profound and moving video of all these voices. You know, you hear them in Hollywood, the press, the Me Too movement, about individuals who sexually harassed, or worse, different individual women, allegations made, lawsuits filed, and so forth. But many of the same voices, many of the same feminist groups, many of the same members of Congress who said they were appalled by all this have either been silent or sort of have done a hit and run on what literally took place in Israel and what happened to women. What's becoming obvious now that Hamas and its Nazi terrorists had decided that they would not only slaughter everything in its path, but it would rape the women and brutalize the women, young women, in addition to beheading babies and so forth. Obviously, these are horrendous war crimes. And yet, if Joe Biden has his way, the very entity that was behind all this will survive against the will of the Israelis. Let's take a look at this YouTube video. Go.
When you fought for the women in Iran,
we stood with you.
When you fought for BLM, we stood with you.
When you said me too,
we stood with you.
When Israeli women were raped, tortured, and murdered by Hamas terrorists,
we stood alone.
عشان تعرف ان الانسانيه عندنا.
مظبوط. شو بدهم يسووا؟
يوسخوا فيهم يعني ينيلوهم يعني.
We were directed to rape them. You know what I'm seeing more of, and actually I'm liking more of, are these people independently posting videos on YouTube and elsewhere. Citizens who have some moral clarity and are outraged by what's going on. Unlike most of the American media, which has moral equivalency between terrorists who rape and slaughter and people who seek to defend themselves against terrorists who rape and slaughter. And this is one of them. I have no idea who Kaya Willis is, but this is what she posted on Twitter that I thought was worthwhile. Go.
The hostage exchange. It's a hostage exchange. Really? Okay, let's take a look at the innocent hostages being released on both sides of this exchange, shall we? This is Sharuk Dwayat, who posted on social media that she wanted to die a martyr before going and stabbing an Israeli in the head. This is Amelia Aloni. She's 5.
This is Nafaz Hamad, who was found guilty and sentenced to 12 years in prison for stabbing her Jewish neighbor in front of her children. This is Raz Asher and Aviv Asher. They're toddlers. Aviv is 2, and she's learning how to potty train. This is Mara Bakir, who stabbed a police officer while trying to take his weapon. This is Karen Munder and her 9-year-old son, Ohad. Karen teaches kids with special needs. There is no moral comparison between these people, okay? And yet we are giving up 3 times as many charged or detained criminals as they are giving us innocent civilians that they stole from their homes. It doesn't make sense. And by the way, when the IDF captured a girl for stabbing someone in the head, they didn't kill her. They gave her a fair trial and then sentenced her to prison. This is not a genocide. It's rule of law. Not a genocide, a justice system.
Good for her. She makes more sense than 98% of the people on TV. You want to know the truth, which raises the question I've asked for some time. Of these people, these civilians who are dying in Gaza, how many of them support Hamas? How many of them have children, sons and daughters working for Hamas? In fact, these statistics that are put out, how many of them include Hamas terrorists? All we hear is this number of people have been killed. Even if you take that number, which you ought not, but for argument's sake, take it. How come it's never broken down? How many of these civilians were executed by Israeli soldiers? How many of them were tortured by Israeli soldiers? How many of them were mutilated by Israeli soldiers? How many were raped by Israeli soldiers? None, 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 and none. And that's the difference. Joe Biden is not only the enemy of the American people, as far as I'm concerned, with his policies and his programs, he's clearly the enemy of the Israeli people. And people who support Israel, including Israelis, but people in this country and others, better wake the hell up before it's too late.
Want to see more? Sign up for Levin TV.